Duty World at War at the time of this writing is still the most gritty, brutal, realistic, and gory Call of Duty game developed. While Call of Duty Black Ops came close, no other entry before or after World at War has matched its quality when adding up the sum of its parts. While I believe there are some World War II games such as Red Orchestra and Hell Let Loose that represent the brutality of war extremely effectively, due to them being exclusively multiplayer experiences, they lack the context of World at War's story and fail to offer the same truly first-hand historical dialogue. The game released in 2008, and upon its initial reveal, fans were somewhat exasperated that they were releasing yet another World War II game after the success of Modern Warfare and the disappointment that was Call of Duty 3. Seeing the franchise return once again to the World War II setting while also exceeding the expectations that Modern Warfare had set beforehand would mean they would really have to knock World at War out of the park. And I believe that is exactly what they did. The game is split into two distinctly different campaigns. On one side, you are the Americans, skirmishing against the Japanese from August 17th, 1942, and on the other, you are the Soviets, battling it out against the Germans from September 17th, 1942. The two campaigns vary drastically in terms of setting, themes, and characters. Overall, I do think the Soviet campaign is much better when we combine these elements, but both campaigns are exceptional throughout almost every single mission. I am not a historian and truthfully only know small snippets about the events of World War II, and for that reason I'm not going to delve very deep into what is actually happening in the missions. But truth be told, the small cutscenes at the beginning of every level does a good enough job of doing that anyway. And although the solo campaign for World at War is fairly short, the variety of missions and the difficulty of them when playing on Veteran can still make for a fairly lengthy playthrough. Of course, campaign isn't the only game mode World at War has to offer. Multiplayer and Nazi zombies, renamed in future entries to just zombies, are being two others. But it also included a co-op campaign, where you can play through the vast majority of the single-player story with up to 3 other players, either completely casually or as a competition to rack up more points than other players. Right off the bat, World at War gives us real-life footage of the war in between the missions as part of skippable cutscenes. At first you may shrug it off and it may not seem like a big deal whatsoever, but seeing actual footage gives us fully translatable context to our current mission. World at War does not create a set piece for the sake of creating a set piece, which is a trap I feel like Call of Duty World War II and Vanguard fell into. But I don't necessarily think that would have been a bad thing. Games are simply meant to be enjoyed, and a lot of people are very happy with explosions being everywhere as long as they can hold a rifle and kill some people on the other side. Call of Duty World War II also does have some interesting mechanics in its single-player story, but World at War shows animated maps of the real locations of the missions, interesting statistics, as well as showing the poor soldiers lying in holes dug up from mortar explosions, showing German soldiers straight up being executed and Soviet soldiers scouring through the buildings carefully, holding the same weapons you get access to in the campaign of the game. Comparing Call of Duty World War II and World at War from an immersion standpoint already, this gives World at War an extreme advantage. World at War did stem a little bit of controversy though, with people claiming it went too far and unfairly demonized the betrayal of the Japanese and the Germans in the war, and I do disagree with this, as I believe this game demonizes everybody. The Americans are shown fighting this same war, as are the Russians, killing mercilessly to attack other countries and defend theirs. There are no truly good guys in this war, with each side committing horrendous acts to ensure victory for their respective countries. Take this scene where the Germans are running for their life through the streets while you and the other Soviets relentlessly gun them down, while the Commissar shouts, In addition to this, you also see Soviet soldiers executing Germans in buildings and in the street when extracting information from them proves fruitless. And in a couple of occasions, the game even shows the Germans to be more merciful than the Soviets. I do not think World at War goes out of its way to demonize any side of the war, as it's war. Every side is awful. It's important to remember that video games as a medium are not strictly presented as a documentary. Although World at War does go extremely far with its realism, Treyarch likely developed it with the intention of creating a gritty, no-holds-barred, 9-hour shoot-'em-up campaign. At the end of the day, it is still fiction, and there are countless abhorrent things that happen throughout the World Wars that World at War simply was unable to portray, given the limits of the medium and the timescale the game was given. Frequently throughout World at War, more so in the Americans versus Japanese campaign missions, genuine World War II tactics are shown being used. Kamikaze soldiers assault you in tall grass, tripwires are set up to dissipate numbers, soldiers hiding in small holes in the ground covered in grass, even small groups playing dead in preparation for an ambush. Camouflaged snipers nestled in trees, heavy machine guns deployed in extremely protective bunkers, mortar pits placed strategically in dug-up pits or on top of small hills, incredibly large cargo ships freighting cargo across countries. Everything World at War does feels so much more thought out and realistic compared to later entries in the Call of Duty franchise. World at War doesn't have a particularly long campaign, which is a good thing because there isn't too much variety in the mission designs. The vast majority of them are pretty much run from A to B and kill a bunch of stuff on the way. Oversimplifying them like that makes them sound boring, but I assure you they are not, especially since they don't overstay their welcome. But there are a few missions in particular that spice things up a little bit. Blood and Iron is a mission where you control a tank. You can fire missiles and fire a pretty underwhelming and useless flamethrower. That's about it. Controlling this tank and blowing things up is fun for about 2 minutes, but then the mission kinda just devolves into spamming rockets at things until they go boom, with Reznov throwing out instructions every 2 milliseconds. With that being said, the mission is fairly short, and by the time it's over, it's not a frustratingly long experience, so it can be very, very fun. Black Cats is one of my favorite missions in the game, where you control a one-time character named Locke, commandeering various light machine guns on a Black Cat plane, destroying cargo ships and numerous Japanese Zeros. Oh, and 1 or 2 Japanese PT boats. I mentioned earlier that World at War doesn't create a set piece simply for the sake of creating a set piece, but I would like to talk about some of the incredible sections that they do set up. Vendetta is the 4th mission in the game. You wake up in the middle of a dark, smog-infested ruin of Berlin, with your Soviet comrades lying dead or dying all around you. The 2 that are still breathing, screaming in agony, are quickly executed by a German soldier that jumps up onto the wall, finishing him off. I mainly just want to praise this very first scene of Berlin. It is absolutely horrifying. Downfall is the final mission in the game, and this entire mission is very slow-paced, but backed up by fantastic settings like the Eagle Room, where you could snipe from the balcony and watch the Germans' Eagle insignia drop from the wall as their last line of defense pushes with all they have. And when you reach this final room and the massive structure in the center comes crashing down through the platform below and down into the lower floors, it's amazing. Eviction is the 10th mission in the game, and ends with you and your comrades unexpectedly being flushed out of a tunnel by a massive gush of water. Blowtorch and Corkscrew, the 12th mission in the game, while it has no particularly outstanding set pieces, is a dark and fetid level with a rainstorm happening constantly throughout, adding to the muck and mire of what is already a grueling, gritty experience. Of course, you won't be participating in these missions by yourself. Throughout both of the campaigns, you'll be introduced to many key characters that are all very well developed. Well, on the Soviet side at least. That's not to say I don't think the American characters aren't good, but I do think a lot more effort was put into having the player connect to Reznov and Chernov a lot more than Sullivan, Roebuck, and Polonsky. The American characters seem to solely talk about how they're going to accomplish their next mission, which is understandable to an extent, but when compared to how Reznov goes about doing the same thing, the way the Americans do it is just kind of boring. Roebuck is all, push into that building, shoot that barrel, come on Marines, up the hill, throw a smoke grenade, Miller! The only thing I can say is that it would be an incredibly hard pill to swallow for Roebuck and Polonsky to take up arms when Sergeant Sullivan dies at the beginning of the game, and for that I do admire him. But that's pretty much where my praise for the American characters end. You also, in Breaking Point, the final American mission in the game, get a choice to save Roebuck or Polonsky. Not both of them. So that's neat too, I suppose. You cannot save both of them no matter how hard you try, and depending on which one you save, you'll get different dialogue and cutscene at the end of the game. On the other hand, the Soviet campaign really goes all out with its characters, mainly Reznov. Straight from the very first mission with him, he is charismatic and caring to you. He even comes back for you in a scorching building after you get stuck by a wooden rafter, saving your life when he could have just kept going. Time after time he rescues you, claiming that you cheat death, praising your resilience. Even going as far as to, even halfway through the campaign, giving you the title of the Heart of the Army. Condensing his praises in one paragraph like that may sound like it may even become obnoxious and that he's just licking your ass, but it does not come off that way in-game. There is another key character, Chernov, who Reznov frequently reprimands and scoffs at when he catches him trying to write any details into his journal. In Their Land, Their Blood, he blatantly tells Chernov that he has not earned a small rest and not given permission to sit on a tank to the next battle. He is never complimented, never verbally appreciated by Reznov, yet retains his loyalty and fights by yours and his side throughout the entire game. At the beginning of the Heart of the Reich, the penultimate level, Chernov is caught again writing details in his journal, and Reznov says this.
Which do you think will lead us home? Writing about this war or fighting it? Germany in the blood. No one will ever read this. If you lack the stomach to kill for your country, at least show me that you are willing to die for it.
And not long after, when you successfully stormed the main building, a German soldier suddenly appears and kills Chernov with a flamethrower, charred and breathing his last breath. In quite an emotional encounter, Reznov shouts,
Chernov! No!
Before sympathetically approaching his loyal comrade's body and taking his journal after a short second to pay respects.
Someone should read this.
It is a blatant reversal of his statement earlier on. Reznov came to realize here how much Chernov actually meant to him. He was so harsh to him, time after time, but realizes now, too late, that his loyalty was truly unwavering, and that he had lost someone he considered a friend. The next mission, the final one, Downfall, begins with Reznov reading an excerpt from his diary. It's all small details, but it's some great character development that I believe the American campaign lacks, and honestly, character development Call of Duty seems to very often lack. I don't remember the last time I saw this character development in a Call of Duty game. One of my favorite parts of Call of Duty World at War is the beautifully haunting music. Almost every mission in the game has some incredible tracks that aren't just some generic fast-paced action track, but of course there are some highlights, such as Eviction's Bold Men's City, the suspenseful build-up riffs before the drop as you come face to face with the crumbling, chaotic skirmish in the streets. The adrenaline-fueled drums of Black Cats. The sound of anguish and reality of war in their land, their blood. And the devastatingly haunting vocals of Downfall. Each music track in this game really adds to the experience, and I think this game might also have my favorite music overall in the Call of Duty franchise. Several times now I've mentioned how gritty World at War is. This isn't thanks only to the dirty environments the game takes place in, but also the gore. World at War is by far the goriest Call of Duty game created to this day, and this is thanks mainly to the extreme dismemberment this game features. Seriously, World at War has limbs flying everywhere. Hands, entire arms, heads, lower legs. Even the ability to be able to take off both legs at once are all possible and frequent. You can reduce an enemy soldier to a torso with arms if you use the right weapon. And you can really hear it too. The visceral splatter of limbs is audible even through the gunshots and explosions. It's absolutely awful, and I love it. I promise I'm not crazy. Not all these limbs are from your enemies either. Your teammates can suffer the exact same fate. All's fair in love and war. And as far as I'm aware, the only other Call of Duty title to feature dismemberment on humans was the very next one, Black Ops. But in that game, it was quite rare and didn't feature the distinct sound design that accompanied World at War's relentless gore. I can't speak a whole lot about the multiplayer, as other than Overwatch, my multiplayer shooter experience is quite limited, and I'm admittedly not the best person to gauge what a good large-scale multiplayer experience is like. The multiplayer in World at War did not expand very much on Modern Warfare's. The kill streaks were very limited, only being recon plane, artillery strike, and attack dogs, with no customization to them at all. Weapons don't have a fair selection of attachments either, although that can most likely be defended because we're in World War II. The weapon selection itself, however, I still really like. There are some absolute beasts in here, such as the Thompson, STG-44, MP40, M4A1 Carbine, MG42, and my personal favorite, the DP28, aka the dinner plate. There's something very endearing about the multiplayer in Call of Duty World at War. Nobody is running on walls, nobody's combat sliding every 2 steps, nobody's got an obnoxiously shiny, golden, fully customized sniper rifle. It's all just as mucky and horrible as the campaign. I played about 6 hours of the multiplayer for the sake of this video, and I enjoyed almost all of it. If you want to jump back into Call of Duty World at War's multiplayer right now, you can. There are still a few servers, on PC anyway, that people hang out in, with even boosted experience, so you can get your favorite weapons and attachments really quickly. If you've got Call of Duty World at War on PC, I do recommend jumping back in for a game or two, just to re-experience this boomer shooter. At the end of the campaign, you are given the iconic cutscene of you, the player, who has evidently crash-landed in an empty field. Slowly, humanoid figures get closer and closer to you, every blink of your eye increasing their running speed, until you discover that these are not people. These are zombies. And then you are thrown into the horrorscape that is World at War's Nacht der Untoten in the Zombies game mode. Zombies is the last game mode in World at War, and it has since become a staple of the Call of Duty franchise. It's quite an arcadey game mode, where you can buy weapons off walls out of a mystery box, and you have to survive as long as you can against increasingly more difficult hordes of zombies. World at War Zombies is just fun, man. It's just fun. When it first came out, everyone wanted to see how high they could get on Nacht der Untoten, Verrückt, Shino Numa, Der Reise when it came out. For a game mode that only has one objective, it essentially has infinite replayability. I still remember when I was surviving to like round 10 on Nacht der Untoten on my PS3, and I was like the happiest guy alive, thinking that I was a god. The zombies formula has been almost completely overwritten nowadays with Call of Duty World War II. Yeah, we won't talk about that, but World at War is where it all started. Every map introduced something revolutionary to the game mode, things that are still in it to this day. And although World at War had only 4 maps and was somewhat bare bones, especially if we're talking about Nocta and Toten, with it being the birthplace of this game mode, it is honestly my favorite game of zombies. It's got intense moments, it's got good music, it's got funny characters, it's got the gore. I still boot up Call of Duty World at War to jump into a couple of games of zombies. Even though I have Black Ops 3 and all those maps remastered, there's just something about World at War's rough horror portrayal of the zombies game mode that is unbeaten to this day. Now, there are plenty of fantastic zombies retrospective videos out there, and I want to recommend a couple of channels. First of all, MarcoStyle's hour-and-a-half video on the creation, evolution, and exhaustion of zombies, a phenomenal video. Cruppz, an amazing zombie speedrunner who documents a lot of the world records on the maps and is just a crazy player himself with a lot of game knowledge. And my personal favorite, which I'm so thankful the YouTube algorithm blessed me the ability to find, Lube's currently ongoing zombies retrospective videos on the individual maps. This has been a look back at Call of Duty World at War. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's my first time making a video like this, so please, if you do have any constructive criticism, please leave some comments. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, you know the drill. Thank you so much for watching. I have a Twitch channel where I stream pretty much every single day, if you want to check in the description below, as well as a second channel, a primary channel where I upload some other cool content. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.
As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
This is solemn. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The victory won in the West must now be won in the East.
Gathered here, representatives of the major warring powers, to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored. It is my earnest hope, and indeed the hope of all mankind, that from this solemn occasion a better world shall emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past. A world founded upon faith and understanding of man and the fulfillment of his most cherished wish of freedom, tolerance, and justice.